Hey everyone, and welcome to my new series where I will be trying to recreate and then break down certain mechanics from games I've either enjoyed in the past or I'm currently playing. The caveat usually being that they need to have at least one mechanic which is very identifiable and is able to extract from the overall concept of the game into its own recreatable mechanic. For my first attempt at this, I was actually inspired to do this whilst I was playing Dishonored and realised just how much of a foundation the blink mechanic was to my overall gameplay. Although you could get a lot of different upgrades and perks and abilities, it was really the blink that I found myself falling back on, whether I was going for a kind of stealthy play or the more upfront and offensive playstyle. So to get this one started, I created a new blank project and simply imported the standard FPS template into the project, providing me with a base point for the movement similar to that in Dishonored. I removed the VR and touch input as this is going to be unused, and the unused geometry. As for the visuals, I already had an idea that we'd be keeping this very simple with just flat cubes and materials, so that when I share this out, the final project will be as small as possible for anyone to make use of. For my first step with the implementation, I added a basic line trace, stored the location and used a move to with a lerp animation for the movement. And it was actually at this point that I realised that in Dishonored you are able to blink into the sky, and I think I'd always recognised that Dishonored allowed you to blink into the sky, but I think I just assumed that it would trace down and place you somewhere near the floor relative to where you were aiming in the sky. And also realised then that if you were near a wall or pointing at a flat surface within range of the blink, that you actually blink to the wall and vault up. Now these are things I think I did consider whilst playing. They were definitely taken into account at the very least subconsciously whilst I was playing, but like I mentioned, it was only when I was actually going through frame by frame to see the effects that were visually implemented during a blink animation that I realised all of these different caveats and different ways that you could use the blink mechanic. So the next thing to do was to go back and flesh out the trace logic with a few more of these concepts in mind. So I made sure that I was storing the target location, even if you're not close to a surface, at a certain range, so you could blink directly up and into the air, and then building upon this to check for the normal of any return surface to see if you were against a wall and within distance to scale onto it. Whilst at this stage I started adding some shortcut debug logic just to make it easier for myself to visualize what was happening, and I realized that this could be useful for the released project, so I've left those in with some kind of heads up display so you can see what's happening if you toggle the debug on and off. It was also whilst I was part way through making the implementation of the logic myself in the project that I started playing the DLC for Dishonored, and then noticed as well that Daud has his own kind of version of the blink implementation, slightly different to Corvo. Now whilst with Corvo you have to be pretty quick and precise when you are using the blink ability, Daud actually has a slowdown of time when you're holding the blink input. This allows the player to spend a little bit more time using the ability, homing in with precision on where you want to be, and also taking in your surroundings. So of course I decided that this had to be included as well as another toggle option to allow you to use either Daud or Corvo's blink. With those two different versions of the mechanic implemented, I moved my focus over to the visual effects. The first one is a very simple animation of the player's field of view for the short duration that the blink is happening, and this is to represent the kind of fast movement through space. This was done by simply grabbing the player camera in the blueprint class and altering the field of view on the same timeline that was already being used for the blink movement animation. From the beginning I knew I wanted a kind of lerping smooth animation to get this to get the movement across, so I had that ready and available to go. I also wanted to represent the hands better. So in Dishonored, the left and right hand are usually displayed in the game, allowing for individual functionalities in comparison to other shooters where you just kind of have the left mouse button to fire. In Dishonored, you can use one hand for a weapon and one hand for your abilities. To do this, I imported the default VR template into the project. I took the hand skeletal mesh, flipped and scaled it so I could use it for both of the hands. I had a left and a right hand, and then discovered that it very handily, no pun intended there, comes with a grasp animation, which is perfect because it's pretty much what Corvo and Daud do. When they're using the blink ability, they clasp the hand and then open it to release the ability and teleport to the location. So I hooked this up so that when the blink input is pressed, the hand is grasped, and then as soon as you release it, it will unclasp the hand. As I'd just been using debugs up to this point, the final visual thing to really represent and bring the blink ability together was the particle effect to represent where the player would actually end up. So for this, I modified a cylinder-based particle found in an engine particle pack. I've heavily modified this, stripped a lot of it out to simplify it so it kind of looks a little bit more like the Dishonored one. And I've used the arrow meshes found in the imported VR template content, and I've used that as a nested object inside of the blink effect class to toggle on and off depending on whether you're looking at a scalable wall. So this just gives you a heads up of whether you're going to be able to climb up the wall or if you're just going to teleport into the air near it. To finish off the project, I've added some polish by adding a post-process volume and playing around with values such as the ambient occlusion, bloom and vignette. This just adds the noise to the scene, which makes things feel a little bit more finished. And with that done, I had my blink effect ready to go, playable as the Corvo or Daud version. And on top of that, I've learned a lot about the game that I just simply missed whilst playing it, which I imagine we do quite a lot whilst playing games, is just simplifying the mechanic in our mind so that we can focus on the rest of the experience. So that was a really interesting thing to take away from this. So like I've mentioned, the project from the very beginning, I've intended to release this to anyone who wants to take a look at this. You can reverse engineer the project, take it apart, and hopefully that will prove useful. If you're ready to support me on Patreon, you would have had access to this as soon as I finished the template of the working mechanics. And what I'll do for everyone else, in the description below, there'll be a new link to the Patreon page. I'm just going to kind of nest everything there, but I'll make a free public post to allow you to get the link for this demo project, and you'll have access to everything which you can see in the video here. So if you enjoy this new content on the channel, please do leave a comment, leave a like and share the video around. That really helps the channel, but definitely comment below if you want to see more of these, if you have any ideas on what you want to cover. That's going to be really helpful to get feedback from you guys that this is something that you'll find useful. I personally like learning by reverse engineering things. I like to find big projects, see how they're built, why they're built in certain ways, and take things apart that way. So hopefully this will help people like myself who are able to learn that way and just find that the more pleasant experience of learning things. If you haven't already, then do consider subscribing to be kept up to date with all of the content coming from any of the playlists on the channel. If you have already, make sure that you hit the notification bell so that you actually get the updates of when new content is coming out, and of course it really helps the channel as well. As ever though, thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.